in this short video, I'll present briefly how you can use PkgPage to get a nice looking landing page for your package in hopefully not more than 10 minutes. So this is a package we developed with Zlatan Vazovic, hoping to make Franklin, because it's ultimately running on Franklin.jl, more accessible for people who really didn't want to waste time tweaking CSS and HTML. Right, so I'll basically create a landing page for a silly package called plus plus. Just to give you an idea, plus plus is basically a VCAT operator. So just to show you how it works, I mean, it's not particularly interesting or useful, but it's a fun little package, and it's just a good occasion to show you how to use PkgPage for it. Cool. So if you do use PkgPage in your package, you create a new page calling new page. Pretty simple. This will generate a folder called page. You can change that name, but just check the instructions. So check the PkgPage repository and website, and there are instructions on how to do that properly. It also generates a GitHub workflow, so the deploy page here, so that when you push your changes, ultimately it's GitHub that will build and deploy your site and make it available. But we'll cover that towards the end. Good, so now that we've done this, in that page folder, there is a bunch of files, which is the standard Franklin structure. And we'll gradually show sort of, I'll try to use a sort of an intuitive approach to show how to get a feeling for what does what. So if you call serve, right now it will create a website. It will actually render the site, and you'll be able to see it in your browser. The very first time you call it, it will take like a couple of seconds, and it will potentially have to precompile packages if you show code, but afterwards it will be instantaneous. So just give it a second. There we go. So now the website is being rendered at the usual localhost 8000. So if I check that in the browser, I have the landing page here available and working. Of course, you have to fill your own content. So let's get started with that quickly. So if you look at index.md, it matches the structure of this. So you'll find the sections, etc. in there. It's basically markdown with a few twists. And whenever you make modifications, they will be live rendered in here, right? So for instance, let's say we want to say something else. The page got reloaded, and you've got the content here updated almost instantaneously. So these commands that kind of look like LaTeX, but is not LaTeX, it's inspired from it because LaTeX is kind of convenient, it just generates an useful environments which map to Bootstrap classes, and that makes it easy to generate these sections where you can see that the background is a little bit contrasted. So each section has a background, and the first one is a bit grayish, and then the second one is light, etc., etc. And you can specify a number of things. So basically, the command runs like this. You call \begin, so that's like the name of the command, and then whatever goes in the braces that acts as the parameters of a function, of a Julia function. So you can have unnamed arguments first and then named arguments later. So here the only unnamed argument is section that indicates what environment we're defining. And then there is a bunch of named arguments like title and name, and that will define the behavior of the section. So the title is what gets printed here at the top about this package. And the name is how that section gets included in the nav bar at the top, right? So if you don't specify the name, it will just use the title as the name. All this is explained, by the way, in details on the package page website, but it's just to give you an idea. So the one thing that I will show you is, so all of this I'll let you read in your own time. What's kind of nice is that out of the box you can show some math. And it will use KTech to display it. So this is pretty convenient, especially if you have a technical like a math-based package. If you want display math, you just use double dollars or begin equation array or whatever. All of these work. So cool. And maybe also interesting is that you can show code that gets evaluated on the fly. So let's just show the basic stuff here. So let's say you want to show some simple code using data frames and ++, and you want to show that you can concatenate two data frames with ++. And you want to show the result, right? Let's just see how that works. So it takes a second just to execute the code, but basically what I've done here is that I just wrote the code here in a code block. I'll explain the syntax in a minute. The code was executed on the fly and the output was directly rendered on the website. So this is very convenient if you want to show quickly how to get started with your code and show examples, and also know that whenever your page is built, it will use the code, and so it kind of guarantees that your example is up to date. The syntax here is the standard. So it starts with the standard markdown syntax where you fence the code block with the triple backtick and you specify the language. There is a difference in that if you just do that and you don't write anything else, like this, it will just show the code block and it will not evaluate it. Now, if you do add a colon and then something, with the something being a name, so for instance, eggs here, but you could have it eggs1 or whatever name you want. It should just be a unique name. Then it will evaluate the code block and show the output. Right? So if you have several such code blocks, just make sure to give it a name here that's unique, and that's it. That's all there is to it. You might think that's irrelevant because everything is executed in package page, etc. But that's just sort of how Franklin works, and in theory, it would allow you to input to place the output at some other place, etc., to refer to it differently. But let's keep things simple. So just if you do that and you add the colon and some name, then the code will be executed and it will be shown. Cool. So that's the very basics. So I've already added some silly content here, and it shows how to do stuff. Now I would like to modify the sort of the key structural components. So for instance, this header here, I might want it to look a little bit different. And you can do that by going to config and changing things in the config file. So for instance, I don't want this to be called package page, but plus plus. I want the prepath to be plus plus. So what that means is that it will, when it gets deployed on GitHub, the path to that to the page will be github.com/username/++.jl. If you use your own URL, then you don't want that prepath, which is kind of like this prepath thing in Franklin is basically the way to specify the base URL, right? Cool, and then you can specify a description. The authors, right? And I mean, things will just show. Sorry, yeah, this is plain HTML here. So the thing will just show directly here and here on the page. So let's keep going. So do we want a link to the docs? Well, plus plus doesn't have docs, so no, we don't want that. Do we want a URL? You can leave that empty if you're not using. Generally, if you think that some of these variables are not useful to you, just don't delete them. Just leave them empty. It's simpler. Docs name, well, we don't care. I mean, since that there is this false here, these two variables will be ignored anyway. Do we want a nav bar, like a nav logo? Okay, no, let's remove that, or let's keep it. Where is it located? So it's in assets, logo. So here there's this logo. You could change that if you wanted. Do you want to have an alt for the logo? Do you want to have specific CSS for the logo? So for instance, I don't know, you might want it to be a bit smaller, right? It's a bit smaller. And then there are specifications for the header. So for instance, let's say, do you want to use a hero instead of a full width bar? So if I change this to true, it becomes a hero. And you could use an image for that as a background instead of this kind of repeated pattern. Just follow the instructions here, really. You can modify how wide the sections are. So it's the number here is in terms of bootstrap columns. If you increase it, it will be wider. If you decrease it, will be narrower. Okay, so 8, 10, right? If you want to change the color scheme, you can use hex colors or SVG names. So I don't know, for instance, I could use cornflower blue here, I don't know, and you change it. It doesn't look very good, but whatever, you can pick whatever you want. There is the theme for code blocks. You could use Atom 1 Dark, you can use GitHub, you can use any of the highlight ones that you like. So what this looks like here. Now it's almost invisible, of course, because the background of the section is gray, right? So let's revert back to Atom 1 Dark. You could make you can specify a little bit how rounded the borders are for the code blocks. You can decide to use an indent or no indent, for instance, if you don't want to separate the output from the input. I tend to think that it's nice to have an indent, but feel free to do whatever you want. And that's it. Leave the rest alone. Now, if you want to do anything more specific, I don't know, that you don't really like some of the stuff you want to change, like core HTML or CSS component, you can do whatever you want in the layout and CSS files here. But then, I mean, if basically if you're comfortable doing so, I would just recommend you read the Franklin documentation, and you just you're kind of outside of the scope of package page, which aims to be super easy. But it is very possible, very much possible to modify things, change the core CSS and HTML. Good. So now let's say that I quite like this page, and I think it's fine. I want to deploy it. So let's stop the server, which we don't need. Now we just need to tell the repository that that we want to allow it to run stuff for us. So for this, we need to specify keys that can be used by GitHub Actions. So by the way, on purpose, I left this here. These are just the instructions that you have to follow in order to deploy stuff easily on GitHub. So I'll just do that. So so here I'm in the repo ++. Doesn't really matter that you're in the same repo, but whatever. And you just have to run these 4 steps. So let's do it. sh keygen -n Franklin. And what this generates are these 2 files, Franklin and franklin.pub here. And you just have to place those in the GitHub repository at the appropriate location. So first is you have to copy the private one, so the one that doesn't end in .pub. So let's do that. Cat Franklin, and then you can use on Mac. You can use pbcopy to do this. Cool. Now, if you go to the repository and you click on Settings, Secrets, New Secret, and you call that one Franklin Priv. You paste the entire content, so that's what I got with pbcopy, right? Boom, you add the secret, and you've got this here. And now we do the same with the .pub file, except that we add this to the deploy keys here. Add a deploy key, call it Franklin Pub. And you will want to add the write access. By the way, I'll nuke this afterwards, so if this is not really a security issue. Cool. Now that you have that, that's basically it, right? So I just added the secrets, so the private key in the secrets and the public key in the deploy keys. Okay, so there's before you fully push your changes and you deploy the site, there is a few more small things to be aware of to avoid issues. The first one that you really must do is to add your, if you don't have one already, to add a git ignore file. If you do have one, to add this line, page site. So what this does is when you call serve will generate a folder __ site in which all of the generated content will live. But you shouldn't push that to the repository because the GitHub action will regenerate it, and if there is already one, it will clash and things will not go according to plan. So make sure to add this. There is another one that you should add, and it's a git attributes. And let me just copy paste this. In that Git attributes file, you should have exactly this line. Again, this is in the instruction. You should have exactly this line. And what this does is it will tell GitHub not to consider the folder page for its language statistics. This means that when you push your changes and they're online, and your repository doesn't become like a big HTML repository or considered as such, and remains a 100% Julia repository. So these two things, the git ignore and the git attributes are, so the git ignore is really essential, and the git attribute is quite important if you don't want to mess up the stats. And there is one last thing, which is in the deploy page, in the workflows. You should make sure that the action loads all the packages that you need. So it should definitely load Node.js and PkgPage. This you should leave. But you should add the packages that you need in the examples that you need. So in our examples, we use data frames and we use ++. So just add those to make sure that the GitHub action will run properly. Cool. So then you can add that. I had already done this before, so I just needed to add the git attributes here. So when you push to master, then on the repository, you will see that it triggers the GitHub action here. And this will take around 2 minutes, roughly, to complete. So we're now a couple of minutes later. You can see that the CI build was successful. So if I go now on the main repository and you click on environments, you've got your page online. Pretty cool. So that's it. So really, it's pretty straightforward. You just to summarize what we did, you use new page, you use serve to show your changes. You modify the config.md for the layout. You modify the index.md for the content. There are special commands that you can use for the index.md. Those are explained on the PkgPage website. You should make sure that the deploy page is adjusted to your case, for instance, that it loads the appropriate packages. And the two tricks, small tricks, adjust the git attributes and the git ignore, and set the keys for GitHub. And that's it.